everybody, Trevor here, and welcome to another Top 10 video. And for today's topic, we'll be discussing my top 10 favorite preschool shows of all time, besides Thomas, of course. As the video's title suggests, I won't be including Thomas and Friends here, even though it's still technically my number one favorite preschool show of all time. The reason for this is because I want that to be its own top video one day. However, I will include its early American spin-off, Shinetime Station, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. This video is for the other little kid shows I happen to like, so not only will I include those from my childhood, but also a few of those from the current generation, as well as one that I haven't grown up yet because it's UK exclusive. Now without any further delay, let's begin this brand new top 10, shall we? Number 10 is Shinetime Station. You may remember that I've made a top 10 best Shinetime Station episodes quite a while back on my YouTube channel, and I explained my honest thoughts on why it's so good. However, the reason it's number 10 is because, for one thing, I only grew up with certain portions of that show. Secondly, I promised myself not to talk about Thomas in this video, for the most part, even though it's still my most favorite children's show of all time. I'll provide a link to that video in the description below. Number 9 is Bob the Builder. When I was an adolescent, I was first introduced to the US dub of this show. It held my interest for a little while, but then I grew out of it quickly because I was more interested in trains rather than construction stuff. But as I grew older and started revisiting the original Bob the Builder on YouTube, I was starting to appreciate it more because, for one thing, I had no idea there was an original UK dub of this show until I discovered YouTube. Second of all, unlike the 2015 reboot, which wasn't all that great to begin with, the original Bob the Builder had likable and relatable characters, especially Scoop, who was one of the best supporting characters of that show because he was sensible and reliable. Not to mention Spud, who was pretty funny, and Rob Rackshaw does a good job voicing him in the UK dub as well as the US dub in Project Build It. Oh, and when it comes to the show's theme song, as well as its slogan or motto, "Can we fix it?" I like to jokingly reply with, "No, we can't!" Sorry, I couldn't resist. I mean, every time when I hear that song or motto or catchphrase or slogan or whatever, I often like to make fun of it by saying, "No, we can," instead of "Yes, we can." So in conclusion, if you are into construction stuff in general, or want to learn how to build stuff properly, then I highly recommend the original Bob the Builder on BBC or Nick Jr. because let's face it, the new reboot sucks because it looks too realistic. And not to mention that the characters are completely out of character for the most part. Number 8 is Postman Pat. Postman Pat is about a friendly British postman who travels around the beautiful countryside in the friendly town of Greendale along with his trusty pet cat, Jess. The show itself is basically a slice of life sort of show, with wonderful characters, beautiful scenery, calming music, clever writing, and common sense, particularly in the first 2 seasons. I was first introduced to this by a user named James A. Williams, who did an excellent job reviewing this show. I suggest you go check it out. Never mind the fact that Postman Pat has gotten downhill since season 3, but the main reason why this is number 8 is because, for some odd reason, it was never brought to America along with classic Fireman Sam, which is such a shame because I honestly like Postman Pat for its calming and relaxing nature, as well as its unique storytelling and voice acting, especially Ken Berry, who voices Postman Pat. But thankfully, there is the internet along with YouTube, so I was able to watch plenty of episodes on here as well as the movie itself, which wasn't received too well. Seasons 3 to 5, in my opinion, are mid, but the most interesting things about them are the lip movements and the Greendale rocket itself. But Special Delivery Service, on the other hand, I'll admit, it wasn't good to begin with due to its repetitiveness and that it was made to sell more toys, just like with CGI Fireman Sam and Peppa Pig. Personally, if I want a reboot of this show, I think it should stay true to the original source material as well as having the same quiet tone as the first 2 seasons. So all in all, Postman Pat is a great UK exclusive kids show, particularly with the first 2 seasons, and those are the seasons I would recommend watching the most because of these reasons alone. Number 7. Bluey. This show is the only good Australian cartoon thus far, while most of the others are freaking terrible in terms of writing, humor, and characters. It first came out in 2018, but wasn't brought to America until 2019, and it lasted until 2024 with the final episode titled The Sign. One of the many things I like about Bluey is the likable and relatable characters. My most favorite of the bunch would have to be Bandit, the father of the family, because he's kind of like me when it comes to playing with kids and taking care of them on a daily basis. Except that in real life, I'm just a single uncle living with my sister and brother in law. Yeah, I know how Bandit feels when it comes to babysitting. I also like some of the cute and funny moments here and there, especially with Bluey and her little sister Bingo. Heck, I even enjoyed some of the episodes, including the ones that tackled touchy subjects like divorces. Oh, and did you know that Disney censored or banned some of the Bluey episodes on Disney Plus? Yeah, pretty weird, huh? But honestly, I would have liked it more if Disney hadn't censored anything, especially if it's something that small, like Bandit getting hit in the groin or pretending to be pregnant. Censorship is stupid sometimes, in my arrogant opinion. But regardless, I still enjoy watching this show with my family. Not that I want to be a father to begin with, but I can understand why many adults like this show too, because it makes them want to be a good parent, just like Bandit and Chili Healer. Trust me, there are a lot of toxic parents in the world, both in reality and in fiction. I'm so thankful that my parents weren't like that for the most part. Sure, they weren't perfect, but they're definitely better people than Timmy Turner's parents from the Fairly Odd Parents, as well as the Griffins from Family Guy. And seriously, why do most Australian cartoons suck in terms of entertainment? Why can't we have more good ones like Bluey? Number 6. Mickey and the Roadster Racers. While I did enjoy Mickey Mouse Clubhouse for the most part, but when it comes to Mickey Mouse Preschool spin-offs, my favorite of the bunch would have to be Mickey and the Roadster Racers. For one thing, I used to like racing when I was a kid because I often would race my Chevron cars around the house. Man, those were the days. Secondly, unlike Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, which is an interactive kids cartoon like Dora the Explorer, this one has actual plots and characters that I can get into easily. You see, I always prefer kids shows that have an actual plot so that way I can pay attention more and appreciate the hard work and effort put into the storyline of each episode, especially the ones that involve Minnie and Daisy. In addition, this show is like Wacky Races, but with Mickey Mouse characters. One of my favorites would have to be Goofy and his tub-like race car. So in conclusion, Mickey and the Roaster Racers is the best Mickey Mouse spin-off on both Disney Junior and Disney Plus. If you're a loyal fan of Mickey Mouse in general, then I suggest watching this with your family and friends. Number 5. Puppy Dog Pals. I don't know about you, but I think this show is freaking adorable. Why? Because I love pugs as much as any other family-friendly dog breed. Unfortunately, my sister and brother-in-law don't like pugs that much because of the weird noises they make sometimes. But that's okay. I still think pugs are awesome and quite funny too. Anyways, Puppy Dog Pals is about two different colored pugs with interchangeable personalities named Bingo and Rolly, who live with their owner Bob, who was an inventor, a purple cat named Hissy, and a robot dog named Arf, which stands for Auto Doggy Robotic Friend. In each episode, whenever Bob is away or has a dilemma about something, it is up to Bingo and Rolly to go on a mission and travel around the neighborhood and the world to accomplish their goals. For example, there was an episode where they traveled to Ireland and another where they traveled to Egypt, which begs the question, how did they travel around the world so quickly? But that's okay, it's just a kid's cartoon. It doesn't have to make complete sense. And besides, I can't help but adore these two pug characters despite their interchangeable personalities. In conclusion, if you want to see a very cute dog show, especially on Disney Plus, then I highly recommend Puppy Dog Pals. It's actually a quite fun and entertaining show, both for kids and adults alike. In fact, it's my favorite Disney Junior cartoon, with Mickey and the Roaster Racers being second. Number 4 is Little Bear. This was another one of my favorite Nick Jr. shows when I was a little kid. I always think of Little Bear as a bear version of Mowgli from the Jungle Book, while his father is more like Baloo. In other words, I love the happy and healthy relationship between Little Bear and his parents. Not to mention that it's like an original version of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, but without the dark twists at the end. What I love about Little Bear is not only the likable and relatable characters, including the titular character himself, but also the beautiful 2D animation by Nelvana, as well as the soothing and calming music, including the two theme songs. Yes, there are two versions of the theme song, one for the Nick Jr. airings, the other for Canada. Yeah, they even did the same thing for Rupert Bear back then, which was weird because I kind of like both theme songs for each show. Now, I could play both Little Bear theme songs here, but I don't want to risk a copyright strike from Paramount or anybody else. I especially love the writing, the direction, and life lessons for each episode. One of my favorite episodes was Little Sherlock Bear, where he and his friends play hide and seek to pass the time while Father Bear's pie cools down on the windowsill, only for it to disappear out of nowhere, and it's up to Little Bear and his friends to find out who took the pie. Fun fact, did you know that Little Bear was based on a children's book of the same name? I used to read that book with my mom when I was little. And because of these reasons alone, Little Bear is my number one favorite Nick Jr. show of all time because I'm very nostalgic for it nowadays, even though I grew out of it a long time ago. And if you like bears in general, or cute cartoons that have calming music and likable characters, then this is the perfect Nick Jr. show for you. Number 3 is Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. This is one of those earlier children's shows back in the early days of public television, and it was one of the most revolutionary shows of all time, and for good reason. Why? Because Fred Rogers was an overall great man and a great Christian. He even cares about his target audience more than Barney in my arrogant opinion. Fun fact, did you know that Fred Rogers guest starred in Sesame Street as well as in Arthur? Learn something new every day, am I right? Back to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood itself. One of the many memorable things about this show was the fact that he nails almost every single intro and outro of each episode. Man, he's such a professional. I especially thought the supporting characters like this mailman named Mr. McFeely did an excellent job with their respective roles. But my most favorite thing about this show of all would have to be the toy electric trolley that travels from Mr. Rogers' house to Imagination Land, where you can meet various puppet characters such as King Friday, as well as X the Owl. Seriously, every time I see this toy trolley on screen, I always envy it and think to myself, I want that trolley! Man, I wish I could go to the Heinz History Museum in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania someday just to see the props and sets in person. Overall, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was not only a great children's show, but one of the most revolutionary shows of all time along with Sesame Street. I suggest you give it an honest chance because it's just that heartwarming and educational. Even helps me calm down, relax, and put me to sleep whenever I need it. Trust me, I have a couple DVDs of the original show along with the movie starring Tom Hanks as the character. Number 2 is Sagwa, the Chinese Siamese cat. Even though I'm normally a dog lover and I prefer dogs, but I do have some respect for cats in general because I met a few in my entire life that were really nice and friendly to me. Like they would come to me, nuzzle me, and even lick me on rare occasions. But anyways, regarding Sagwa, the show is about a Chinese Siamese cat who lives with her family at the magistrate's house, and her job was to sign scrolls by using the tip of her tail as an ink feather, which I thought was pretty clever. Sagwa not only goes on adventures with her little sister Shigwa and her older brother Dongwa, but also with a blind bat named Fufu, who wears glasses and often visits them on various occasions. In this show, not only do I like all the characters, including Sagwa herself, but I also love the 2D animation at the time, the old Chinese village setting, and the life lessons that some of the characters learn. One of the more interesting episodes, in my opinion, was the catfish one, where Sagwa meets a blue catfish who tells her a story about how a catfish came to be and how he is a relative to the cat. I know it's just a story, so I don't mind that one bit. So, overall, Sagwa is honestly one of the best PBS Kids shows out there, and it's criminally underrated. I love all the main characters, especially the foolish magistrate, who reminds me of a Chinese Sir Topham Hatt, as well as the writing, animation, setting, calming music, and important life lessons that each of the characters learn throughout the series. I highly recommend you watch this show if you're also a fan of cats. Now, before I get to my number one pick, I just want to give a bunch of honorable mentions. Chuggington. I've already made a review on this show, so go check it out on my YouTube channel. Paw Patrol. It's cute, but it got beat out by Puppy Dog Pals because I hardly got into the franchise. Not that I hate it to begin with, but still. Fireman Sam. It got beat out by Bob the Builder and Postman Pat because I'll admit, it did go downhill ever since the CGI series started. However, I didn't mind some of the new voice acting like Stephen Kimmin as the titular character, as well as David Carling as a few other characters like Trevor Evans and Station Officer Steele. In other words, it's a guilty pleasure of mine. Sesame Street. The reason this didn't make it was because I already grew out of it years ago, and besides, I don't need to relearn all my letters and numbers. Still, this is a much better kid show than Barney the Dinosaur in terms of educational value. Salty's Lighthouse. I've already made a video on why I like this show despite its major flaws, so I'll provide a link to that in the description below, just so I don't sound like a broken record. Blue's Clues. I was originally going to add this to the list, but to be honest, it would have been lower on the list because I grew out of it a long time ago. Not that I hate it nowadays, it's just part of the nature of aging, and I hate aging. But still, it's a very decent show, and I still think it's as good as the reboot on Paramount Plus in my opinion. Rupert Bear. It got beat out by Little Bear. Arthur. It would have been higher on the list because I haven't seen it in a very long time. I mostly remember the first few seasons back in my youth, but regardless, it's an overall great show despite its ups and downs. And the number one spot goes to Theodore Tugboat. There are so many reasons why I put this as number one on here. For one thing, it's technically my second most favorite children's franchise overall, with Thomas being number one. Secondly, the model animation is so unique as it reminds me of Thomas but with boat characters that live in Canada. Speaking of boats, did you know that the reason this show was made was due to the existence of tugs? While Tugs was aimed at older kids and teens, Theater Tug was aimed at a much younger demographic. But who cares if this is for kids? Adults can enjoy it too, you know. In fact, I grew up with this awesome show ever since the late 1990s when it first aired on television and released onto home video in America. The very first VHS tape that I've had was Big Harbor Bedtime, which introduced me to the series and the characters. I loved it so much that I began buying the rest of the VHS library throughout the ages. If you want to learn more about my honest thoughts on this show, I'll provide a couple links into the description below because I don't want to repeat myself on certain things like my favorite characters and episodes. Otherwise, we'd be here all day. Now let me know in the comment section below on which of these preschool shows are your favorite. Do you agree with my list or do you have your own personal preference? And it doesn't have to be a preschool show. It can be an educational show that's for bigger kids like The Magic School Bus or Wildcrafts, just to name a couple. My next top 5 will be on my favorite video gaming franchise of all time, so stay tuned for that. This is Trevor Davis, signing off.